Well, I assume you're catching on to what our theme is today, and maybe it makes more sense why I chose the Wolf Rescue as our good news story. The theme for March, according to the Unity schedule, the calendar schedule that we've been sort of loosely following, is creating community. And though we're using a Lenten fasting and feasting affirmation for March and April to support our Lenten practice, I thought I'd begin this two-part lesson on community with a community affirmation. So please join me.
I am open to a deeper understanding of spirit within all people and our earth home. We are one with all of creation.
Now, if you check the Unity March calendar, you might notice that I've slightly expanded this affirmation. When I saw the theme of creating community, I was drawn to a larger vision, a larger view of oneness. In essence, our oneness with all of creation, not just with humanity. Because at this most critical time, I think that's the most important wake-up call and mission that we can embrace. Because while establishing a sense of global community between countries and cultures and religions and people in general would surely be a huge step towards the fulfillment of oneness, short of the nuclear option, human wars are not the thing currently threatening mass extinction and or the end of our current geological era. Whereas our dominant modern human story and dream that views the earth as a resource to be consumed is destroying ecosystems and biodiversity at an unsustainable rate, toxifying the air, water, and soil, not to mention compounded by the threat of climate change, such that the health and existence of all species, including our own, is at risk. As I've noted before, our current geological era is now being viewed as the sixth major extinction in Earth's 4.7 billion year history, with humans being identified as the primary cause of 20,000 species being lost annually. Let that sink in. To quote the Yale Divinity School Forum on Religion and Ecology, this increasing damage to ecosystems reveals we are making macrophase changes to the planet with microphase wisdom. We are not fully aware of the scale of the damage we're doing, and we're not yet capable of stemming the tide of destruction. Unfortunately, for decades, this realm of environmental challenges and eco-justice has been largely left to scientists, lawyers, and policymakers, with most religious organizations remaining virtually silent except for the sort of periodic honoring of Earth Day and talk about stewardship of our planet, but it has not been taken on as an issue of our day until recently. But while science and policy approaches are clearly necessary, they are not sufficient to do the job of transforming human consciousness and behavior for a sustainable future. Reviewing, revising, and perhaps even replacing some of our underlying values, morals, and ethics, which all fall within the realm of religion and spirituality, are essential factors in this transformation. As the cultural historian Thomas Berry proclaims, the great work of our time is to carry out the transition from this current period, where humans are a tremendously destructive presence on the earth, to one in which the human presence is beneficial to the planet and the entire community of life. Berry calls this establishing a mutually enhancing human-earth relationship. And I'm calling it creating global eco-community. This involves, as described by the Pachamama Alliance that we've become so involved with and have been doing many of their courses, shifting from an industrial civilization to an ecological civilization. And as described by one of Pachamama's environmental authors and speakers, Charles Eisenstein, it's about moving from our old story of separation to a new story of interbeing. That clearly comes under the purview of our spiritual teachings. In either case, this requires a fundamental transformation at both an individual and collective level, a virtual reinvention of what we consider the role of human beings to be in this world and in history and time. In 1947, historian Arnold Toynbee declared, "The 20th century will be chiefly remembered by future generations not as an era of political conflicts or technical innovations, but as an age in which human society dared to think of the welfare of the whole human race as a practical objective." As we ponder that aspiring vision in retrospect, it becomes clear that this 21st century must be the age where this expansion of human care continues in ever-widening concentric circles to encompass other species, other ecosystems, and in essence, the whole of creation. Now, my limited human fear-based self wants to warn, and we need to do it now, or we're all going to participate in our own demise. There's a part of me that just, I don't know if anybody. But while self-preservation is usually an effective human motivator, we can't solve this crisis from the same level of consciousness that created it. In fact, we already have all the knowledge and all the technology we need to meet and resolve this crisis. What we're lacking is vision and will. In essence, the consciousness to see a bigger picture and the will to claim a new story. In the Discerning Our Purpose class, which concludes this Wednesday night, we revisited Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many of you remember that from college psychology classes and such, right? Basically, it's a theory of human motivation comprising a 5-tier model of human needs, often depicted as a hierarchical pyramid. As the diagram shows, the base of the pyramid includes our physiological needs like food and water and warmth and rest, followed by our safety needs, safety from harm, security, measures taken to reduce and eliminate danger, and that's followed by our need for loving and belonging, having intimate relationships, family, and friends, followed again by our esteem needs, feeling a sense of accomplishment, of prestige, of respect and status, standing and influence, and finally, our need for self-actualization, achieving our highest potential, fulfillment, continuing to grow for gross value. The underlying idea being that human motivation largely follows this hierarchy. In essence, until our basic survival needs are met, we can't really focus on the next level, and so on up the tiers. Maslow later clarified that being met doesn't mean 100%, but rather being somewhat reasonably satisfied. So we're not locked into a tier until it's all handled, but until we can just begin to feel comfortable enough that we can begin to expand again. And of course, what enough is varies for different people, and is always in a state of flux. For example, we may be going to college at night to fulfill a passion, which means we're functioning at that 5th level, but then we lose our job and that threatens our housing, so we may have to quit or postpone taking the night class to get a job to pay our bills. So we don't just easily step up the tiers in an easy and orderly way. Most of us are kind of up and down depending upon what's going on in our lives. A further clarification that I wasn't aware of until it came up in our class, however, is that the bottom 4 tiers are what's called deficiency needs, meaning that their motivational effect diminishes as the need is met. In essence, once we have met a need tier, we start taking it for granted. It sort of goes off of our radar. So it no longer serves as a primary motivation, and the higher needs begin to take over. Whereas the top level, self-actualization, is a being growth need, where our motivation increases the more we self-actualize. In essence, growth needs don't stem from a lack of something, but from our innate desire to, or innate call for us to continue to grow, which is also, by the way, what keeps us moving up the tiers. People aren't happy with just having their basic needs met. We're always seeking to grow and have more in our lives. We come to that, the more you know, the less you know. Anybody have related to that? We come to that realization as we move in the self-actualization arena, which expands our sense of wonder and inspires us to just keep learning and growing. Now, what makes this relevant to our current discussion is that it helped me realize why we haven't responded to the self-preservation threat of climate change and other environmental crises. The thing is, it's not imminent enough for our reptilian brain to react, because our needs come from that reptilian brain, and we function in terms of our physical needs from that place a lot. Our reptilian brain is taking for granted our current comfortable ways of living. In fact, I believe that the perceived changes and sacrifices that are looking like they're being required to address this crisis appear to be a greater threat to that reptilian brain than the largely conceptual threat of the consequences of not changing our behavior. A good example of this reptilian brain response is how the Green Deal is being perceived of as getting rid of all of our cars and all of our cows. Of course, the conceptual threat of climate change is becoming increasingly actual, and thus becoming more effective as a motivation to change. But that brings us back to the fact that we already have all the knowledge and all the technology that we need to meet and resolve this crisis. We're lacking vision and will. Again, the confidence to see a bigger picture and the will to claim a different story. As I said earlier, our current industrialized civilization is grounded in the story of separation. A separation largely defined by the two things that distinguish human beings from other species. The first being the power to manipulate our environment, what we call technology. And the second being our ability to accumulate and transmit knowledge across generations, what we call culture. Through this accumulation of technology and culture over thousands of years, we have seemingly created a separate human realm of magic and miracles, separate from the rest of nature that we believed in this story that we were ultimately going to control. We're surrounded by artifacts of our own making, works of beauty, complexity, and power unimaginable to our forebears. Yet, after millennia of development, this seeming separate human realm is now facing nature's consequences. Our power to manipulate the environment has morphed into the capacity to destroy it, or it us. And the ability to transmit knowledge now also transmits destructive lies, fears, hatred, and injustice. Just think Facebook. Is this the inevitable price of civilization's magnificence? Need the sublime achievements of art, music, literature, science, and technology be built on the wreckage of the natural world and the subsequent misery of its inhabitants? Or is this the necessary crisis that will force us into our next evolutionary leap in consciousness and result in a synthesis of the seeming dichotomy between nature and humanity? Charles Eisenstein says, we live today at a moment of transition between worlds. The old story of separation and the institutions like systems of money, politics, energy, medicine, and education that have borne us through these centuries and have been our great hope have lost their vitality and now apparently are crumbling around us. And millions of us already know this. Even as we may feel helpless to change, even as we may feel helpless to stop participating in our own industrial civilization's rush over the cliff, quagmired in our reptilian brain fear of the unknown, and overwhelmed by the seemingly drastic life changes that seem necessary to make a difference. But hold on, there is good news. As you know, life and thus change happen from the inside out, which means the only truly effective response to this crisis requires that we grow spiritually in our awareness and our consciousness into more of who we truly are. Because we can't solve this crisis from the same consciousness we created it. And that means what appear to be, from our current perspective, drastic and difficult changes involving great sacrifices ahead actually involves achieving higher levels of creativity and fulfillment by creating a new vision, a new story, in essence, new answers to the questions, who am I? Why do things happen? What is the purpose of life? What is human nature? What is sacred? Who are we as a people? Where did we come from? And where are we going? Out of the answers to these questions will come a new matrix of narratives, agreements, and symbolic systems that will establish new mutually supportive and sustainable relationships with the natural world, and likely with humanity as a whole. Because as we know, as you change one thing in a system, everything in the system changes. And it all begins with a new vision. And we can all participate in that. We don't have to try and figure out how we're going to change industry and everything. We need to know we need to change ourselves from within. And as we do that, the outer will respond. A new vision of inner being, interdependence, and thriving sustainability. A vision that I believe we and millions, perhaps billions, like us, have already had at least a glimpse of, and that already lives within our hearts, just waiting to be embraced and voiced and embodied. We, in fact, are the imaginal cells within the cocoon that will transform the putrid soup that seems to be our world into a butterfly. Next week, and then continuing during the month of April, we're going to be illuminating this vision in great detail, such that we can claim it and then live it into manifestation. For now, I just invite you to affirm with me,
one with all creation, humanity is a beneficial presence to the planet and the entire community of life, co-creating a just, sustainable, and thriving world.
Namaste. So I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Maybe roll your shoulders. Put your feet flat on the floor. Get as comfortable, close your eyes. And begin focusing on your breath. This morning we're going to participate in what is called a centering practice in 4 directions. It's a practice that some of us learned during the Pachamama Game Changer Intensive. The purpose is to connect fully with our physical beingness within this space and this time in our earth community, so that we're able to take action from what we most care about and be able to return to this grounded space very quickly whenever we get thrown off our center. So again, I invite you to take a deep breath in, let it out with an audible sigh as you begin to feel yourself deepen into this sacred center. I invite you to begin by imagining that you're standing perhaps in a field where the sun's shining. You can smell the flowers, hear the insects buzzing, birds chirping. Breathe in that fresh air, feeling grounded, connected to our Mother Earth. And now I invite you to bring your attention from your thinking self down into your feeling self. In essence, being inside your own body, living inside your own skin, becoming aware of physical sensations such as pressure, temperature, movement, discomfort, grounded in this amazing gift we call a body. And now bring your attention down to about 2 inches below your belly button. If it's comfortable, put your hand there. And feel your inner awareness resting just behind your hand. This is actually our center of gravity when we're standing. And now grounded in this space, feeling centered and one with creation. We're going to center in 4 directions. The first being length. Think about a vertical line, both relaxing through your body down into the ground and lengthening up toward the sky at the same time. Again, imagining yourself standing in a field. Feel your full length, almost like a string is pulling you upwards and the ground is magnetizing you to itself. And with that length, you can think of it as having a spiritual and moral vision at the top, as well as the capacity to take pragmatic, grounded action from your grounding to the earth. We can also think of length as centering in our own dignity, as well as recognizing the dignity of others. And again, take a deep cleansing breath. Breathing in, letting it out with an audible sigh as we move into the second dimension of width. Begin to fill out as wide as you can from side to side. It's helpful if you could reach your arms out, or imagine reaching your arms out. Or just feel the width of your own shoulders as you stand straight, shoulders back. Feeling the width of your sides and your hips. There's a lot in our lives that have us kind of pressured to shrink. And what we want to do is unfurl and widen out again, relaxing out into our full width, recognizing width as our relational space, the community space, where we can let ourselves out more and let others in more, both feeling ourselves and also feeling the presence of others. Centering inside this width through our felt senses. Once again, take a cleansing breath. Breathing in this length and width of us. And exhaling, releasing all that distracts us from this moment. We now move into the third dimension we want to center in, which is depth. And we begin by feeling what's behind us, or feeling the space between our shoulder blades, or maybe the clothes on our backs or on the backs of our legs. Feeling that back side of us fully. And then bringing our attention slowly forward to include all of our internal landscape, our heart, our stomach, our organs, moving all the way through to our front side, increasing our sense of depth from back to front. Inside of depth, we're increasing our access to our internal landscape, and then connecting to our sense of past with ourselves in present time, and then connecting to the future that we're committed to building. Once again, remembering to breathe. Let's take another cleansing breath. Letting out with a collective sigh. So now we've centered in our length and our width and our depth, all in our felt senses, all inside of our own skin. And the fourth and final thing we want to center inside of is our purpose. Bring to mind either an image or a word or two that reminds you of what you're committed to. Remind yourself about what you care about, who and what you truly love, and bring all of that to your center. And now from center out, we let our purpose fill us out, as though someone feeling our presence could tell what mattered most to us. We're informing our nervous system, our entire being, with what we care about, what we're committed to. And again, we breathe. Breathing in to this identified, sacred purpose. And exhaling into our oneness with all of creation. So we've centered in our length, our width, our depth, and now our inner sense of purpose. Let us just breathe into this sacred space for a moment in the silence. And now, as we begin to bring our awareness back to this time and this space, thank your body for how it supports both your being and your purpose. And remember that we can use this practice multiple times a day to build muscle memory. So as we begin to accept this challenge to vision a new story and take a different stand in the world, we know we have this place to recenter ourselves, to reground ourselves whenever it starts to feel a little scary, a little challenging. All we need to do is come back and recognize who we are, our length and our width and our depth and our purpose. And so, with hearts filled with gratitude for this power and this knowing, when you're ready, taking one more cleansing breath in, letting it out with a collective sigh.